There's going to be an election in April. So if you are an SRP landowner, it's important for you to go out and vote and make sure we keep a conservative slate there, because there is a push by the Sierra Club to take over SRP, which will not be good for any of us as SRP customers. So if you're a landowner and you are able to vote in the SRP election, make sure you're informed, make sure you're voting.
Make sure you register, make sure you request the ballot,
Right.
because otherwise it doesn't come, right?
Correct.
And just to put a little spice on that, Kevin and I, when we were elected a few years ago, we unseated an incumbent at the Corporation Commission. Her name was Sandra Kennedy. She is now on the SRP board, and she's vying for the presidency of that board. Very far left. They have openly stated that they will shut down all thermal generation if they get control of the SRP board. That means, no more natural gas, no more coal, no more nothing. It's literally going to be wind and solar only. So God help us all if that actually happens.
Welcome to Save Mesa Podcast. We're diving deep into what the City Council and the school board are planning, proposing, and pushing, because transparency matters. We want to keep you informed about the decisions impacting your city, to help you defend Mesa's values, protect our freedoms, and hold local leaders accountable. Join us as we help keep Mesa a safe and family-oriented community. Welcome to the Save Mesa podcast. I'm Alex Ranicic, and today we have two very special guests from the Arizona Corporation Commission. We have Kevin Thompson and Nick Myers. Myers, correct?
Yep.
Perfect.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting us.
One of the things that, for those of us that are not necessarily involved in whether it's politics or local government or state government, which we always appreciate, is being able to meet you in person and see you in person, and especially when you're accessible. I think a lot of people that are out there think, oh, these people are so far away, it's at a different level, I'll never get a chance to meet or speak with them.
Right.
And it's very nice to know that it's much easier than some of us have thought, especially here in Arizona.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So just a little introduction here, and we try to whittle it down, but there's so much to be said about these gentlemen. Kevin Thompson is the current chair of the Arizona Corporation Commission, or otherwise known as the ACC, elected to the position by his peers in January 2025 after joining the commission in 2023. A Republican with over 25 years of experience in utilities, regulation, and public service. He previously served as a Mesa City Council member from 2015 to 2023 and worked in engineering and public affairs at Southwest Gas. Kevin is also a U.S. Air Force veteran and focuses on affordable, reliable energy without mandates or subsidies. That's very, very impressive. And Mr. Nick Myers is the vice chair of the Arizona Corporation Commission, the first to hold this newly created leadership role, unanimously selected in January 2025 after his election to the commission in 2022. A Republican from Pinal County with a background in software engineering, entrepreneurship, and regulatory advocacy stemming from a personal dispute with a utility. He has prioritized modernizing rate-making processes, reducing subsidies, and enhancing grid reliability. Myers also serves in national and regional roles, including as chairman of the Markets Plus State Committee for Western Energy Markets. Gentlemen, welcome to the Save Mesa podcast. Really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Our local legislative District 10 is very excited for this, because they expressed to me that this is the most exciting podcast that they've been waiting for.
I can't wait.
Yep.
Be the first time we are excited. We have excitement to see us.
Yeah. We spent a lot of time in LD10 last cycle, and
We did.
And we're happy to be back.
Well, as I mentioned before we started the recording, I remember you guys coming through, and I had your sign in my yard, and you had my vote, so we're glad to see
Appreciate
you running again. Yeah. With that being said, since it is 4 years later, You are wanting another term. Tell us why.
Well, we're having so much fun. No, really, it's there's when the first time we ran, we had to pop up, talked about all the things that we wanted to try to do. Eliminate Green New Deal, eliminate mandates and subsidies. Well, the good news is we fulfilled every one of those promises that we said we were going to do. We did those the first year. So now we're cleaning up a lot of what the previous commissions over the last decade or 2 decades have left undone. And so we're coming back for round 2 to really clean the commission up, eliminate some of these old rules and mandates that are driving up our utility costs, and really trying to hold the utilities accountable and ensure that we're preparing Arizona for its future. We want to make sure that we're aligning with the Energy Dominance Council and what the president's policies are, and and we're glad that what we're seeing out of the administration, because it's things that Nick and I have been fighting for since day one, and now we have the administration, the federal government, and Congress on board to help us fight those fights. And so it's exciting.
Yeah, we like to say that we had this energy policy of nuclear, natural gas, and whatnot from the last campaign cycle. So Trump's energy agenda aligns very well with ours. Well, people get a laugh out of that, but
you were there before he was.
That's right.
Well, this is very good to hear. Somebody that escaped, and I say it jokingly, but I am serious at the same time, literally had to run away from California. Yeah. Not from California originally, just lived there. I have to clarify that.
As long as you're a refugee, you're welcome here.
I've been accepted as a refugee. And so leading into, we'll ask a little bit about how California, things like that, might be affecting Arizona. But the Corporation Commission, people, we hear about it. We don't necessarily, yes, it has something to do with utilities and the rates. What does it do and what does it not do? Because there might be misunderstandings of what you actually can affect or what controls you have.
That's a great question, and we get asked that a lot. 98% of what we do is regulate utilities. So we set just and reasonable rates for the utility company. We can get back into that a little bit more because there are constitutional bounds about how we can do that. The other 2% encompass things like securities regulations. So we like to joke that if Bernie Madoff were in Arizona, he would fall under our umbrella. Another thing we do is railroad and pipeline safety. So if a train and a car trade paint at an intersection, we're the investigative body for that. Same thing for pipelines. If there's a pipeline explosion like we had in Coolidge a few years ago, that fell under our jurisdiction. The Mill Avenue Bridge, that explosion that happened, that fell under our jurisdiction as well. So we play an important role in the safety of those industries, but for those we are largely just the federal branch. So we have some authority over there, but mostly it's enforcing federal policy for railroad and pipeline safety. We incorporate, do the incorporations filings for businesses. So we're a great big filing cabinet. We have no jurisdiction over those businesses unless the paper isn't filled out correctly, and then we can reject it. We have done a couple of small things to kind of try to combat fraud as much as we can. But since we don't have a whole lot of jurisdiction in that, we're literally just a filing cabinet. And then there's a little bit of telecom that we still cross paths with, but largely that was deregulated back in the 90s, and it's going away quickly. So, landlines, backhaul services, things of that nature. But
so that's a lot of extra stuff that ties into the majority, which is the utilities, right? Okay.
All that other stuff was the 2%. 98% is regulating utilities.
Okay. So here's the silly question that maybe somebody else is also thinking. Can you just tell the utility companies no more rate increases?
Nope.
I mean, is it not that simple?
It's not that simple. We actually have the Arizona Constitution is, the organization itself was founded at statehood under the Arizona Constitution, and so in the Constitution it tells you that the utilities are allowed to recover their costs in a just and reasonable manner. So what they do has to be prudent, and and they are allowed to recover their costs in a just and reasonable manner. And so it's up to us to figure out what that just and reasonable is.
That means for both sides of the equation.
Both
right?
sides of the equation. So, from the time a utility comes in, we have our ALJs, which are the administrative law judges. So it's basically it's like a trial hearing where the utility is there. You have interveners, you have citizens, a
Plaintiffs,
multitude
defendants,
of,
yeah.
And so you have a multitude of people asking questions, picking apart the utility, picking apart their costs. Our staff is doing the same thing. There's a utility residential consumer advocate, RUCO, does the exact same thing to make sure that the residential consumer is protected. So everybody's involved in picking apart a rate case. And then when it comes to us, we pick it apart further. And so what you've seen since Nick and I have been in the last 2.5 years is almost $1 billion that we stripped away from the utilities in their rate cases. So we take them to task. There's a lot of fluff, a lot of fat, and we like to joke that we were Doge before Doge was a thing. And so when it comes to the utilities, we're wanting to ensure the utilities are staying in their lane. Their job is to produce electricity and keep the lights on. And, they shouldn't be, playing around in the EV charger space or any of these other spaces that are costing. Planting trees, yeah. These arenas that are costing ratepayers lots of money. And so that's, it's whack-a-mole sometimes because as soon as you kill one program, another one pops up. And so we're trying to, really pull the constraints in and stop some of the reckless spending the utilities are like, for example, for decades before Nick and I came on board, utilities were allowed to recover their board of director fees. I haven't seen a board of director out there that supports the residential consumer or business consumer, right? They're there on behalf of the shareholders. So why are we as ratepayers paying for board of director fees? And so we eliminated board of director fees from all the utilities. So now the consumers aren't paying that. It's coming out of the shareholders' pocket as it should. So it's things like that we really dive in. We take a scaffold to and really try to carve out all the fat and basically doge the utilities.
It's important to remember also that there's a common misconception out there that we are there to protect the ratepayers. And while that's true to some degree,
Yes, that's actually what we think.
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
and it's great to think that, but the reality is we're there for just and reasonable rates. It's our job to keep the lights on and keep the rates as low as possible, and that means the utility has to maintain their viability. So that means they have to recover these costs that they're putting into it. It's our job to make sure they're not going above and beyond, to make sure they're not double dipping, to make sure they're not gold plating everything. And in those cases, we can trim it out and not allow them to recover it, so it'll have to come out of their pockets.
Right.
But by and large, we are not. Our job is not to protect the ratepayers solely. It is part of our job.
Right.
So
Just a couple of clarification follow-ups here. It sounds like, right, you're the commission, and now the utility companies are doing projects, they're doing certain things, new programs, and they have to come before the commission, make their case, show their due diligence, here's the numbers, here's why this and that, and then the commission votes on accepting or not accepting.
it's an 18-month process to do that.
Yep.
And it is 18 months for every project, or
Every rate case
rate
where they
Every rate-
justify those projects.
okay? And so how often do they bring these rate cases?
Every 2 to 5 years.
Yeah, it's really up to the utilities. We don't dictate when they come in for a rate case, which is unfortunate because what that means is they're never going to come in for a rate case if it's going to lower the rates.
Sure.
Right? I mean, from a business standpoint, why would they?
Right.
So that means that you will almost always see a rate increase. It's our job to bring that down to as much, as close to reasonable and as close to zero as we can. But that's not usually going to be the case. Now, what they come in and ask for is not what they're going to get by and large. I've never seen a rate case yet where they came in and asked for something and got it. Right? It's always a happy middle somewhere in there.
Right.
So what happens if, again, just I'm talking for you guys, I'm asking questions. What happens if you're, what, no, we're not going to do a rate increase. No, we're not going to do a rate increase. Do they then come and sue?
Yep. And
And that's happening.
as a matter of fact, even if we come in a little too low. So it happened back right before we were elected. There was a decision that brought the ROE down to like 8.6% based on customer service issues for one of the utilities. And that utility sued because 8.6% was out of the range that was discussed within the hearing process, so it has to be justifiable. And RUCO, the utility consumers organization, right, residential utility consumers organization, they're the ones that fight for the people. They came in with an ROE of something like 9.2. The utility came in with something probably 10 or something. And the happy middle was somewhere in between. Well, the then commission decided to vote on it and just said, well, because of all your customer service issues, we're going to give you 8.6, far less than the 9.2. They took us to court, or took the commission to court, I should say, and they won because it wasn't justifiable. It wasn't supported by the record.
What court? What
That
courts?
was
Supreme Court,
Arizona Supreme
Yep.
Court.
And then, of course, because of the delay and all the processing of the courts and everything, it fell on our shoulders to now have to figure out how they're going to recover all those lost costs based on what the previous commission did. So one of the rate increases, quote unquote, that we had to approve wasn't because we wanted to, it was because the courts ordered us to.
Right.
And now here's a good bit of what Kevin and I have been doing. Part of that case was they disallowed the scrubbers. They're the selective catalytic reducers that go on the coal plants on Four Corners.
I got that one coming up here.
So they disallowed that expense recovery, and that was part of that same case. Well, when Kevin and I got this thrown in our lap and said you have to allow recovery for it, we were able to go talk to the utility, and ultimately the utility backed off of the recovery for the scrubbers as long as we gave them the ROE correction. So we did negotiate a little bit of a reprieve from that rate case. They had every right, according to the judge, to ask for that recovery on those scrubbers, but we were able to negotiate it away. So those are the kind of things that we do on behalf of the ratepayers that, we don't necessarily, sometimes we don't have any legal right to ask for it, but sometimes it's the right thing to do, and we can convince the utilities that that's the right thing to do.
And Alex, I think it's important to note that, for the viewers as well, that, if anyone ever tells you that they're going to get elected and lower your utility rates,
They're lying.
they're lying. They're probably not being honest with you because the Constitution, again, allows the utilities to recover their cost. And that cost includes poles, wires, transformers, pipes, everything that a utility has to have to operate
Employees.
is included in that cost. And so as long as inflation is rising, as long as they're generating electricity, and as long as they're investing in the utility, your rates are going to go up. It's just, it's going to happen. So for somebody to tell you they're going to reduce your rates, they're not being honest, or they don't understand how rate making is done. And so our job, again, is to try to minimize the impact on the consumer while we also try to make sure that the utility stays healthy.
Now, this leads into something else that may be on your list of questions, and that is we recently introduced and the commission voted on formula rates. Formula rates are something that the FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, has had in place for like 50 or 60 years. And what it is the utility comes in for a rate case, they define a specific formula of how that should be calculated, and then every year that formula is applied and readjusted. What that means is that, first off, they're required every year to come in for that adjustment, whether it's higher or lower.
Adjusting the formula.
Adjusting the contents of the formula.
Okay.
The actual formula doesn't get changed unless you come in for our rate case and we go through the whole hearing process. But once that formula is decided in the hearing process, it's used consistently, and what is included in that formula may change. Like, let's say the formula says we can put poles and wires in it, right? And that's the recovery. Every year, if they spend money on poles and wires, it goes in, the formula is readjusted and comes back out with the same return and everything that was approved originally. So that means, in theory, may not ever happen, but in theory, there's a possibility that rates could lower now, right? Because if inflation goes down,
yeah.
right? If, all of a sudden, hey, your formula says you should be earning less, now you should be earning less. Over the long run, it's never going to be less. It has to increase because, it follows inflation. But the benefit to that is twofold for the ratepayers. One, and this is something we heard on the campaign trail a long time ago, and that was that why do we have to have such massive increases every 3 to 5 years? Well, now you have smaller chunked increments over that time instead of one massive one, and it follows inflation a lot better. So that's a benefit. It's a smoother gradualism, right? The other benefit to that is anytime the utility is hanging on to money that they should have recovered from the ratepayers, it's earning interest, just like a credit card debt. So if that utility is hanging on to that money for 3 to 4 or 5 years, you're paying interest on that as a ratepayer. So by getting it refunded to the utility faster, you're paying less interest. So that means in theory, you pay less to the utilities. So,
in theory.
Well, and actually that's a pretty good theory. That one is something that absolutely holds true because you're not paying the interest that you would have paid over 4 years on $600 million, right?
So to me, it sounds, this is, again, I don't know, but it sounds as if there is an incentive or the utility companies to do projects because then they can present, hey, we need to recover these costs. And the reason why I say that, I have a friend that works for a utility company back in California, and he said we make the most of, we generate the most on projects, and I didn't understand that.
Capital expenses,
Capital
yeah.
expenses.
Okay.
And you're not wrong. There is a bit of an incentive to do that. It is our job to make sure
But
that
do you get to approve the project
We do.
before they? Okay.
it has to be. Biggest argument there is it has to be used and useful. If they do something
Used
just
and
to
useful,
view it
okay.
and it's not really useful or they don't actually use it, they don't get to recover for it, at least yet. And this has happened. For example, there's a water company that built a water tank, and then 2008 happened, and the housing boom crashed, and nobody moved in, and that water tank ended up sitting there unused because the population growth didn't occur. Well, they didn't use it. It wasn't used and useful. You don't get to recover on it, and they've just now started to get to recover on it because they could put it into service. So,
Okay.
So we do have tools in the toolbox in the rate case to do that. Now, for formula rates, you might ask, well, how do you know that capital expense didn't get put in the formula? Because every year, those projects have to go through a prudency determination before it's allowed in the formula.
So the formula, who designs, writes the formula? Does it have to go through the same exact process where they present it to you and then you kind of pick at it?
Both sides pick it apart, yep.
Okay. All right.
And they come up to an agreement, and then the judge rules on it, and ultimately we're the final judges.
So it sounds as whether, I don't know what you call them, policies, or if you call them changes to whatever, it seems as if the initiator is always the utility company. Is that almost?
That's pretty
Yeah.
much the way it works in
Okay.
Arizona. It's a historic test year, and that's initiated by the utilities.
Okay.
That's just the way it goes.
Which kind of brings me to something that has been happening in California. Again, just kind of I'm concerned.
Yeah, sure.
I don't.
We love using California as an example.
Yeah,
of what
great
not
litmus
to
test,
do,
yes.
not to do. Yeah,
Yeah.
they were. I can't remember what it was called, but what they were doing is they were paying off the rest of however many years of operation that the utilities, said, okay, we have it for this lifespan. Then they're saying, well, we want to buy you out basically at a premium for you to shut down early.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Stranded costs.
What is that called?
Stranded costs.
Stranded costs.
Okay, and so I'm thinking, what is the incentive? What's the motivation to do that? Because you're
Political pressure.
okay. So that gets into, I guess, kind of my next question here is this Green New Deal. Now, I remember when you guys had come through the campaign season, and that was kind of like the buzzword. Right? It's like,
Yep.
okay, well,
And apparently it still is.
it's still yeah,
Even though we've killed it.
We killed it.
and,
It's
and-
gone.
And so that is, my number one concern. I don't want to have to move again because I have to.
Right. Right.
And
You
so
and me both.
how does, policy-wise, so I'm assuming something happens, there's incentives for the utility companies, maybe from the federal level, maybe regional, I don't know if it's regional or from state level.
You want to go through Choya? It's a great example of this.
I mean, walk us through, because, we it's like, how does all this stuff make its way to my house.
Right. Yeah. So Green New Deal, for all intent and purposes in Arizona, is dead.
What did that mean for Arizona, a Green New Deal, if it was implemented?
It was higher cost is one of them, because there's more and also a lot more instability in the grid. And so, like, for example, one of the things that Nick and I did day one, I think it was the first or second month that we were in office, is community solar was a big deal back when we first came in. And that's where a developer comes in, they build, a 100-acre, 200-acre solar array, and they were turning it over to the developers for neighborhoods and so forth, or over to the utilities. But neighborhoods, primarily it was like apartments, low income, fixed income, and so forth. But you would subscribe to this solar, green energy, right? But what was happening is that cost was getting put onto the utility, because they were forcing the utility to take over the operation and maintenance of this solar array. So when Nick and I came in, these projects started coming to us. So we did a joint amendment and threw it out there and said, well, we're going to put some bumper rails in place to protect the consumers. And so one of the things we did is we eliminated the must take. So we said, if the grid becomes unstable, the utility doesn't have to take any power from your solar array. We said there can't be any cost shifts, so the developer can't push the cost onto the utility, and the utility can't push that cost onto the consumers. And we did a plethora of other protections that we put in place.
Low income protections.
Yeah, so we told them that like 60% of all the power generated had to go to low or fixed income individuals. Really was forcing them to put their money where their mouth was, right? And so once we implemented all those bumper guards per se, we've had zero applications or projects being built in Arizona, which tells you it was just a money scheme, right? It was developers that were wanting to take advantage of all this federal funding to build these multi-million dollars. They were putting cash in their pockets, and they were walking away, leaving the residential consumers to pay the price. And we said, no mas. And so we put all these bumper guards in place and shut it down.
Yep.
When you drive into California,
Yep.
they are
you see miles
everywhere.
So what you're seeing here now is in Arizona is, since we came in, we've stopped the utilities from investing their consumer dollars into renewables. So what you're seeing now in Arizona is private development on private land.
We didn't necessarily stop, their need. We didn't necessarily stop their need for, power. We don't care where it comes from. We just don't want the utilities to build it.
Right.
Now, I was going to say California energy policy is great if you live in Arizona. Did you know that they're taking all that solar power and paying us to take it?
Yes.
And then in the evenings, they're buying it back.
I didn't know about the buyback.
It's awesome if you live in Arizona, because we're double dipping and keeping the rates lower because of that.
Yeah.
I guess that's a thank you.
Thank you, California.
Thank you, California. Yeah.
Okay. Well, how, getting back to California, so you put in some safeguards for like the solar. I know wind is a thing that, when it's blowing, I guess it's working.
Right.
But I haven't seen that much wind or
only from politicians' mouths.
Yeah, we in Arizona we have very limited corridors, mostly up in the Winslow area where there's enough wind generated to spin turbines, and so that's where you're seeing a lot of the wind turbines is up in that area. Again, it's all private investment on private land, and oddly enough, we don't regulate renewables. We tried to. I know Senator Frank Carroll tried to push a bill through this last session that would allow us to have regulatory authority over renewables. but the governor vetoed it. And so,
Oh, well, yeah.
we only regulate the thermal, so nuclear, coal, and natural gas fired generation. We don't regulate the non-thermal, which is your renewables.
Transitioning a little bit over to nuclear, with
That's
the
him.
okay, with these data centers, for example, there's a lot of talk of maybe these mini,
Small
gen-
modular reactors. Yeah.
reactors, yeah. What, for example, so Mesa, my understanding is there's 15 data centers out of 60 in the state. So that's 25% of all the data centers are in Mesa. Okay, good or bad? I mean, you can make arguments either way. How does that affect utilities, these data centers, and then maybe transitioning over to the nuclear? I mean, how does it affect the rates and the power? I mean, how much of these things have to use?
So, regardless of what generation type that serves the data center, the growth is going to pay for itself. We've made that abundantly clear. That's something that's a principle.
What kind of growth? Sorry.
So the data center growth,
Okay.
right? That's a huge topic right now. These
Yep.
massive data centers coming in. Basically, we're requiring that they pay for that growth themselves. What that means is not only are they going to pay for the generation type, whether that be a natural gas, internal reciprocating engine, or or a nuclear power plant. Doesn't matter to us, but they're going to pay for that. They're going to pay for the poles. They're going to pay for the wires. They're going to pay for any substations that have to be built. And then...
Sorry, the growth, you're talking about the demand for electricity.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, got it. Not physical
so they're
warehouses or whatever they are.
Well,
Okay.
they'll pay for that their own buildings.
I just want to
too,
make
but-
sure that that's
Right.
Yeah. So they're going to pay for all of that expense, but then they're also going to pay for something like 80% of the energy that they've committed to buying from that generation source. They're going to pay that regardless of whether they take it. So it's a take or pay. And what that means is that none of those costs get saddled on the residential or small commercial. As a matter of fact, if they don't take it and they have to pay for it anyway, all of that gets put back into the pot that helps reduce costs for residential. Now, with that said, there may be some market options where they can go sell that excess energy if they end up not using it, and that'll help reduce their requirement to pay, things like that. Those are all contractual discussions, but by and large, growth is going to pay for itself. That's kind of the way it's been. There might be some different tariffs and whatnot we have to discuss, which he's got a docket open to discuss those. But by and large, that's the concept is it shouldn't affect residential and small commercial.
Okay. Well, that sounds nice.
Yeah.
So there's really two utilities that here, I guess, in the area, the valley, SRP, APS, right? What would you say are the differences between the two?
One is APS is what they call an IOU, which is a independently operated utility. So they are a private company, sell stock on the stock exchange. SRP is quasi-governmental because they were founded before statehood by a bunch of farmers and ranchers that wanted to control the Salt River. They saw that the constant flooding of the Salt River washing away farms and ranches wasn't good for the valley, wasn't good for future growth. They wanted to build dams and help control that, generate to make reservoirs for future water sources. So some very, very bright minds back in the early 1900s worked with the federal government, and so that's how SRP was founded, as a water utility really for ranchers and farmers, and working with the federal government. So they are quasi-municipal in nature, so they have their own elected board, so we don't regulate them at all. The only time we intervene or have an issue with SRP is when they're doing bonds. They have to come to us for approval, or line siting for power lines and generation. So they'll come to us for that, for approval.
No
But
rate
outside of
setting,
that,
no
we don't.
nothing.
Okay.
They have an elected board, which the board is, there's going to be an election in April. So if you are an SRP landowner, it's important for you to go out and vote. and make sure we keep a conservative slate there, because there is a push by the Sierra Club to take over SRP, which will not be good for any of us as SRP customers. So if you're a landowner and you are able to vote in the SRP election, make sure you're informed, make sure you're voting.
Make sure you register, make sure you request the ballot,
Right.
because otherwise it doesn't come, right?
Correct.
And just to put a little spice on that, Kevin and I, when we were elected a few years ago, we unseated an incumbent at the Corporation Commission. Her name was Sandra Kennedy. She's now on the SRP board, and she's vying for the presidency of that board. Very far left. They have openly stated that they will shut down all thermal generation if they get control of the SRP board. That means, no more natural gas, no more coal, no more nothing. It's literally going to be wind and solar only. So God help us all if that actually happens.
Yeah.
So in a way, maybe the Green New Deal is dead, but there's workarounds, because what I didn't share initially is my family originally escaped communism in ex-Yugoslavia in the 80s. And this philosophy, it doesn't necessarily help with energy.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
I don't understand it. I don't know whether it's what they're trying to
It
protect
hurts.
or prevent. I mean,
It'll drive up our costs. It'll destabilize our grid. We'll have rolling blackouts and brownouts. I mean, look at what happened in Europe, right? With France and Spain and Italy and some of the other European countries that turned off all their nuclear plants and turned off all their coal plants, and predominantly went with renewables. And in England, their costs skyrocketed. And a lot of them are pushing pause and saying, wait a minute, we need to start these nuclear programs back up. We need to start investing in gas. And so you're seeing a change of heart in Europe, because they realize that renewables are not the answer.
It's gotten so bad that my wife was on the phone with a customer a couple of weeks ago in England. And the Teams meeting or Zoom meeting or whatever, got interrupted.
Went out.
And when they got back together, the guy's like, "Oh yeah, sorry about that. It's the afternoon during the peak time, and the wind wasn't blowing, so it happens every day." This was just par for the course for this guy these days. That power was going to go out every afternoon. Right. That's mind-boggling to me.
I just don't get it. I mean, it's why would you do this to people?
Yeah.
It's
And why would you do it
ideological.
to the most vulnerable,
Right,
the
100%.
lowest income, because that's who's gonna be injured the most.
Right.
But this is the philosophy for the people. I don't know.
It's a religion. It truly is.
It only benefit a lot of
Because
these
it doesn't make any
policies-
sense in this regard. I mean,
Right. It is so unbalanced that a lot of these policies end up benefiting the rich and the people that can afford to have solar, or upper middle class. But if it goes wrong, it disproportionately hinders or harms low income. It's amazing to me. People don't see that.
Our peak here, the way it's set up, SRP is from 3 to 6. I shut down everything. My family's like, "Dad, it's summertime. Shut it down."
Wow, you are a beast if you're shutting off air conditioning.
Air conditioning, shut it down. It does not run between 3 and 6.
Wow.
So I'm trying.
Yeah.
But you mentioned some of the scrubbers, and so a little bit over to the Cholla coal power plant.
yeah.
This am I pronouncing that right? Cholla.
Cholla.
Yep. Yep.
Quesadilla.
Quesadilla, that's right. Vaseline Road.
Yeah. So I've heard of jalapeno and jalapeno. So the Cholla coal plant, I've heard this. People have been asking, shut down, not shut down, and I don't know if this is APS. Is it an APS?
It's APS.
Okay.
Yes.
So one of the other things I just wanted to add, what I've noticed is certain areas I'll drive, and you'll see one side, the neighborhoods, they have solar panels on the roofs, and then the other neighborhood across the street doesn't. And then I find out, okay, the APS very friendly with solar panels. I don't know what, maybe the incentives are different, how they structure that.
Yep.
Is that just me, or is that actually?
That was part of the mandates.
Okay.
And part of the rest rules that we just voted on this past Thursday to eliminate completely. But that was mandates from previous commissions that forced the utilities into these renewable subsidies. And so that's some of the stuff that Nick and I killed when we first came in. We don't have an issue with solar. Just don't make me pay for your solar.
Yeah.
Right. And if you want solar on your house, that's fine. You pay for it. Don't make me pay for it. And so that's some of the stuff that we've reversed. So you're not seeing as much now with inflation the way it has been under the Biden administration.
I like how you said that.
The rooftop solar doesn't pencil. When your costs are 33% higher, it doesn't pencil. And so you're seeing a lot of people just say no.
So again, sorry to beat this horse. So this philosophy there for the environment, they're all the right. What happens when these panels expire? Because the process is fairly filthy.
Yeah.
And they're not made in the U.S.
Right.
So where do you put them? It's kind of like the blades from these wind turbines.
Yep.
They can be recycled. The problem is it's cheaper to throw them in the landfill than it is to I heard a number the other day that it was something like $1 or $2 to throw it in a landfill as overall cost, but to recycle it, it's like $6 per panel. So
where's the green right?
It's in the landfill.
Yeah, what was interesting is when we voted Thursday to start the process to eliminate the rest rules. The Sierra Club, so Sandy Barr from the Sierra Club came up to the dais or to the podium and was arguing that we should not eliminate the rest rules, renewable energy standards and tariffs. That was the impetus behind Arizona going green. So we did Thursday what no Republican in the state has ever done in the last 20 years, almost 20 years since the rest rules were implemented, and that is to overturn the rest rules and repeal them. So you've got 2 Republicans here that started the process, and you have 5 Republicans on the commission now. Thank you. That voted 5-0 to repeal those rest rules. So it was those rules that were put in place. But Sandy that pushed all of the solar. Sandy Barr tried to make the argument that they were much cleaner. And during the meeting, when she was at the podium, she said, let's talk about cradle.
Cradle to grave.
She said cradle. She didn't want to talk about grave. She said cradle. And I turned and looked at Nick and I said, did she just say cradle? Who wants that one? Are we going to jump on this one? Because we were going to fight over it.
Luckily, Commissioner Lopez did.
Luckily, Commissioner Lopez
give us
did.
some information.
Yeah,
Cradle means what?
So cradle to grave.
Is that an acronym or?
Cradle to grave is beginning of life to the very end of life for like solar panels, right?
Gotcha.
What is the mining process all the way to the burial process?
Okay,
Right.
got it.
So she brought up the cradle piece, and Commissioner Lopez, Renee, was like, well, let's talk about this cradle piece. So let's talk about.
We were arm wrestling on the dais.
Yeah, we wanted. We were just frothing because we wanted to take her on this, and
he won.
But he won, and because he was the one that was already doing the questioning, and he said, yes, let's talk about the cradle. So Sandy, tell me, where do you think lithium comes from? So does it grow on a tree? Because if it doesn't, it's mined, and so is the cobalt, and so is, and so is, and so is.
I mean,
right?
It's
nasty,
yeah.
Right? And it's all imported from China and South America. And so he was like, let's talk about the cradle piece. And she quickly shifted and said, well, it's when you're using the carbon-based fuel. So when you're using coal plants and gas plants, it's the fuel that's providing them, whereas the sun isn't dirty, and so she quickly shifted because she realized she screwed up.
Stepped in it.
Yeah. So it's So we have fun up there.
So back to the Cholla plant. Sorry, digressed on that.
That's all right.
The green stuff.
We've tried to hit that 3 times already.
Yeah.
Let's do Cholla.
What is the?
So what happened?
Yeah. What happened?
So back in 2008, 2013-ish, somewhere in there, I think it was in 2000. It was under the Obama administration when Obama had his all-out war on fossil fuels. And if you remember, the cost of coal went up, cost of oil went up, cost of gasoline skyrocketed, and our cost of energy went up. So the Obama administration also, with the EPA, started developing these rules, as EPA rules, that really took the utilities to task. One of them was called the Regional Haze Rule, which isn't a measurable. It's basically just it looks like it's creating haze. And so the EPA came in and tried to shut down, or they did shut down, the Navajo generating station. And they used the regional haze rules to shut it down. And they said it was because it was creating haze in the Grand Canyon. Never mind that the Navajo generating station is about 50 miles east of the Grand Canyon, and prevailing winds always blow west to east. So there was no way the coal plant was actually generating smog and dumping that into the Grand Canyon, right? Regardless, APS was forced to close Navajo Generating Station along with the other owners of Navajo Generating Station. And they, at the same time, they also went after the Cholla plant. And to APS's credit, APS said, well, wait a minute, you just can't start shutting down all of our plants or we're going to have blackouts and brownouts. We can't continue to operate our system with no generation. So they didn't have the Cholla plant outfitted with scrubbers, and that was why the EPA was going after it. And so APS negotiated with the EPA and said, can we avoid a lawsuit, avoid shutting it down if we give you a date certain that we can close this plant? EPA came back and said yes, because that'll give you time to build new generation. And so you fast forward through all these iterations of commissions that did nothing. And then, it was in their IRP that they're going to close it. They had been building generation, whether it was renewables or whether it was natural gas peaker plants. They had been making all this investment since then. And then on May 1st, they had to shut the plant down.
That was the date agreed upon.
That was the date agreed upon back in 2013.
2013.
2013.
Yeah, whenever it was.
Before you guys were on the
way
commission.
Way before we were on the commission.
So one of the questions is, well, can't you as the commission say no to that?
Well, so let's finish.
Okay, all right.
So
I just devil's advocate here.
So we'll finish.
We'll get there.
Let's go down this. We'll keep going down this trail. So, so about a week or 2 weeks after the Cholla plant closed is when President Trump said, we need to keep our big, beautiful coal plants open, and specifically mentioned Cholla. And that created an issue. And so,
mind you, keys were locked, everything. 2 weeks before that, they had shut the plant down. They had already burnt their last pile of coal. Workforce has found other jobs,
right? And so it was a shuttered plant. And so Rachel Walden and I got on the phone. We talked to some folks with the Interior Department. Had a conversation with them. Subsequently, ended up talking to the White House, as well as some folks from the Energy Dominance Council, and they said, what's it going to take to get that plant back up and running? Made a phone call to APS and said, what's it going to take to get this plant back up and running? They said, let me get the information for you. It came back and said $1.9 billion with a B. And I said, you're full of crap. I need you to line item that so that I can see for myself that it's 1.9 billion, because I know to outfit scrubbers is only about 250 million.
So in this questioning back and forth, does the utility do they take direction in this regard? Like, hey, you've got a plant that's down, we want it back up.
They can't. We can do that.
Okay.
It may be irresponsible, which we'll get to.
Okay. All right. More to the story.
Yeah. So when they came back with their line itemed cost, I was like, wow, it's 1.9 billion, because the section of the Peabody coal mine that they were taking coal from had closed when they delivered their last pile of coal. So that section of the mine closed. Their coal contract had expired, so they would have to work with the Navajos to renegotiate a contract. They'd also be on the hook for partial cost for reopening that section of the Peabody mine. They would have to install the scrubbers at $250 million a piece.
How big are these scrubbers? I mean,
They go
They're
on
massive.
the big stacks. They're massive.
they're
$250 million a piece.
Right.
Okay.
So with 4 units, it's almost $1 billion anyway. And then they had all the deferred costs that they did. It was like an old car. If you know you're getting rid of an old car, you're not going to put a new engine and transmission in it. You're going to rotate the tires, put oil and change the oil and filter in it on occasion, and drive it until it's dead. And that's what they did. They just didn't do any of the deferred maintenance because that wasn't a cost that they wanted to put on the consumers, knowing that they were going to close the
they
plant.
had a retirement date. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And so they closed it and said it's $1.9 billion. I got on the phone with the White House and I said, we have a problem. I've got a $1.9 billion cost that you're asking the commission to put on the backs of 1.4 million APS customers. The math ain't mathing.
What would that break down to?
It would drive over, because that would only be for a 2 to 3 year time frame. So $1.9 billion into
To recover it right away.
costs would skyrocket, like probably $100 or more per month. Per person, per APS customer.
And just realize that cost isn't going away when Trump is out of office. So if there's a different administration, that plant shuts down again. So all that 1.9 billion they're still going to pay for, as well as the generation to replace it.
Right.
So you've now compacted it 3, 4, 5 times, very likely.
So I asked the administration if there was grant dollars or any other thing that they could kick our way to help us if we were to get that plant back up and running. They said, nope, there's no money available. I said, well, are we okay not opening Cholla if we can focus on keeping our other 3 coal plants open? And they said, that sounds like a great idea. We'll leave it in your very capable hands, and hung up. And so we've been marching along for, since May 1st with the intent of trying to ensure that we can keep our other coal plants open.
And
it's
that's,
worth-
that's three? No, how
There's-
many other?
Yeah, so we've got
Springerville,
Springerville, we've
Four
got
Corners.
Four Corners, which is in New Mexico. We have a co-op that has one down in Cochise County, and then there's one other
Coronado?
one. Coronado.
Yeah.
So I don't really count Cholla because that's in New Mexico. So in
Right,
Arizona
Four Corners.
proper,
Okay.
or I'm sorry, Four Corners, because that's in New Mexico, but I count the other 3 that are in
Okay.
Arizona proper.
Yep. What was I going to say about that?
Don't know.
I don't know.
Can't read your mind.
Yeah.
If it comes back.
Used to.
Maybe on the scrubbers, the cost cost per person, the 100,
We already
the rate
covered that.
not coming back down.
Yeah, that's all right. We'll
administration.
cover it.
Okay.
Yep. So that's what happened there. But the good news is that APS kept the property, and I think that's
That's
probably
okay.
where you're going. So
We're looking really hard at putting nuclear on that site. So we
I'm
get
sure
to
you're looking forward
repurpose.
into that.
We get to repurpose a lot of that infrastructure that's there. It's not just going to be uprooted and thrown away, right? If we can reuse power lines and structures and substations and maybe even generator heads with a nuclear power plant instead of a coal plant, those are the things that we're looking into at this point.
I'd be for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Supposedly it's the cleanest
Yeah.
environment.
Not
but,
supposedly.
Well, Chernobyl,
Well, but
they'll
that-
always bring that one up.
They'll bring up 3 Mile Island.
They're
Japan.
3 Mile. The Japan. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Apples
they're-
and oranges.
They're growing grapes where Chernobyl is, and they're selling Chernobyl wine.
Yeah, it's more of a
It's-
tourist attraction than anything at this point. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm not saying that stuff can't happen,
No.
but so here, Legislative District 10, we've got you have a competitor that's vying for the position, Ralph Heap. He's an Arizona House Representative, and I believe it's David Marshall, also another House Representative. This is kind of a sensitive topic just because we have, not the two of them, but where I'm going with this, because Justin Olson, he was on the Corporation Commission and represents us still, has represented us before. You had made some comments at a committee meeting, I don't know, a couple months ago, I think it was. And I just want to find out where was that coming from? What was the, because I'm assuming something in the background, and so it
Yeah.
came up to a head, and then for those of us kind of watching Corporation Commission, like, okay, something's going on. What's going on?
It
And
was
so to clear
yeah.
the air for,
Sure.
yeah, if you can.
Yeah, it was pure frustration on my part. The commission was getting attacked by the legislature. We had spent a lot of time down at the legislature trying to defend the commission and our constitutional rights. And Justin had dropped a bill that required a 2-year stay out for the elected officials as well as the staff at the commission, and also eliminated the ability or a 2-year stay out for anyone coming from any entity that we regulate coming to the commission to work. That would be a detriment to the organization because, it doesn't matter to me. I'm not going to go to work for a utility. I don't think we've ever had a commissioner that went to work for a utility after they were done with the commission. So if you want to do a 2-year stay out on me, that's fine. We already have a 1-year stay out anyway. So what's another year? So I called Justin and I said, Justin, you've been in this seat before. Your bill will decimate this organization. We get our employees from industry. We don't hire high school or college graduates, straight into pipeline and railroad safety. We go to industry and we hire them away. And so the last thing you want to do is say that if you work at Union Pacific or BNSF or something that, that you have somebody that's highly qualified on railroad safety, that we can't hire that person, that they would have to quit their job for 2 years and sit on the sidelines for 2 years before we could hire them.
We don't pay them that much.
We don't pay that well to begin with. And so I said, you're going to decimate this organization. You're making it so that even our security guard can't go to get a job at at any utility and or at any at any
Securities
like a Schwab,
firm, yeah.
Schwab or anybody like that, right? They wouldn't be able to get a job outside doing security work. And he said, well, that's really not my intent. I didn't want it to do that. And I said, so could we work with you on some friendly amendments and something that we can get behind, which would have been to carve out every single item except for the 2-year stay out for the commissioners. Right. And he said, let me think about it. And a week later, he ran his bill as he ran it. It was so bad that even the Republican caucus wasn't going to vote for it. So he saw the writing on the wall, so he tabled it. Brought it back again for Cal, and again saw that it wasn't going to pass, so he tabled it again. Went back the following week for a third time and started negotiating deals with Democrats to get his bill over the line. And to get it over the line and to get the Republican votes, he stripped everything out of it except for the 2-year stay out, which was what we wanted to do from the beginning. So it was frustration on my part because he wasted so much time. He wasted so many people's time.
And he should have known better.
And he should have known better as a former commissioner. And it just blew my mind that somebody would write bad policy or just was facetious enough to try to shut down the commission. And it was frustrating because as the chair, the organization is my responsibility. I represent the organization as the chairman, and my job is to protect the organization and its employees. And his bill was just going to decimate the organization, and I couldn't allow that to happen.
Really appreciate you sharing that because we don't hear typically both sides of the story.
It's worth noting that once it was gutted like that, we actually supported the bill.
Yeah, we supported it once it was gutted, and it just a 2-year stay out
targeted
for
us. Absolutely.
We were fine. We supported it, and in fact, we had a staff meeting where we talked about the legislation, and we all 5 of us supported it.
So the frustration that kind of peaked, was that before that final version was passed, or was it after?
It's well before.
Yeah.
It was before. Okay, all right.
When Olson promised to work with us on it and then didn't.
Got it. Okay. Well, because you make some very good points, security guard or whoever else
Right.
working.
Janitors, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't care about me. I don't care about Nick's viability.
Well, thanks. I love you too.
Yeah, I was going to say
I
that.
mean,
That's on. Did you? You
know,
just said that.
I mean, I don't care about my future beyond the corporation commission as far as going to work for a utility. I've worked for a utility. I'm not going back to the utility world. And it was a bill that was looking for a problem to solve, and there was no problem there. And so it was just really frustrating on our part because it was, trying to protect the employees. I mean, we want to hire people that understand utilities. We want to hire people that understand pipeline safety and railroad safety. We want professionals coming into our organization, and quite honestly, if we're not paying enough, then we want them to be able to be successful in their career and their life. So why couldn't they go to work for a utility? Why do you have to, sit on the sidelines for 2 years before, as an employee, before you can go get a job?
What do you think the intent was of the bill?
To stop public officials and the corruption and the revolving doors between the utilities they regulate, and right, it makes sense. And as Republicans, we want to stop that kind of corruption type activity. Whether it's corruption or not is debatable, but it's viewed as corruption, and we don't want that either.
It just doesn't look good if you have.
Right.
And so
But
then
again,
you start to question.
I mean, we have never had commissioners that have left the commission and went to work for a utility.
We've had some ALJs and things like
Right.
that, but why are we stopping their employment, right? They have to make a living.
Okay.
But
Yeah, I know it, like a revolving door, something local here. I'm sure there's a very good reason for it. At the city, police chief retired, and then the new city manager hires him back
Right.
as an assistant city manager. And so I'm sure there's fantastic or very good explanations. It just, the perceived, okay, what's going on?
Right.
And having, you being able to explain that, I think is very valuable, because I didn't know all the things that
Right.
went on. So thank you. Really appreciate it. I know it's kind of a sensitive topic here, but now we've.
And I have no ill regard for Justin. I think Justin's a great legislator. It just, I wish he would have worked with us initially and allowed us to work with him to get behind a bill that we could support instead of just throwing crap against the wall to see what would stick.
And the final bill was everybody
Yeah.
was on board.
Yeah, we were fine
It
with
was
that.
a 5-0 vote to support it.
And it's worth noting that I don't have any ill will either. I mean, I worked for him for 2 years prior to being a commissioner, right? He taught me a lot about this.
Were you his?
Deputy policy advisor.
Okay, that's right. That's right. Okay,
Yeah, did that
I
for
read
2 years, and I'm sitting in his office now.
Okay.
So, there's a relationship there, right? It's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
this one act that caused some headbutting.
Is there anything that I didn't ask or that we didn't cover that you'd like the viewers to know? Anything that's
Well,
like,
there was the the announcement last week or a week before last on the Transwestern pipeline that's coming in. It's a 42-inch pipeline coming from the Permian Basin.
Big deal.
Transwestern's
That's a
bringing
big
that one
deal.
in. It's a big deal because right now in Arizona, our natural gas lines coming in from the north and coming in from Texas from the Permian Basin, they're all at capacity. They're all fully subscribed from California and Nevada, from the north line. The gas line that comes in through Tucson and comes up to Phoenix and goes out I-10 all the way up to California. So those lines are at capacity. There is no more decatherms or BTUs that can be built off of that pipeline. And so we've been pushing Transwestern, Kinder Morgan, and El Paso Natural Gas. Every year when we have our winter preparedness meeting, every year we've asked the same question: when are you going to build another pipeline? And they said as soon as we get enough subscription to it. We now have enough subscriptions. So APS, TEP, Unisource, SRP, City of Mesa, Southwest Gas. So all of them have now subscribed to the line, and it's a big deal to have a 42-inch pipeline bringing more gas capacity into Arizona is a big deal. And then on top of that, El Paso, I think it was El Paso or Kinder Morgan, is building a compressor station up north to Kinder Morgan is. building a compressor station up in the Prescott area, somewhere up in there, to compress gas and send more gas into the North Phoenix lateral. So it's increasing our gas supply in Arizona in the Phoenix metro area. That means that some of those coal plants will now be able to convert them to natural gas so that we can operate them 100% of the time year round. We can also
Any cost in energy savings, or is it, or at least a flattening for a while with
well,
that?
I think what it'll do is it'll help us with grid reliability
Okay.
on the electric side, because the utilities will be able to invest in more natural gas peaker plants, more conversion of our coal plants over to natural gas. Like for example, the Springerville plant is not running at 100% capacity right now. It's mostly just a peaker plant for the summer months. And so once that's converted over to natural gas, that plant will be able to run at 100% capacity, generating power for the next for the foreseeable future.
It'll
So
also
it's
help
a
with
big
load
deal.
growth. New data centers coming in, right? This is where they would get that energy from.
Okay.
It's also worth noting that on the same day that was announced, we've been beating on the utilities for 2 years to get rid of any kind of ESG and DEI and Green New Deal policy.
Yeah,
Right?
tell
This
me
is
about
just something that we've flat out told them. Now, mind you, we don't have any managerial control over the utilities. It's just something that the courts have said many times. You can't do that. But we can certainly apply pressure, and we've been doing that. Well, on that same day, they announced basically they're rolling back their commitments to
Sustainability.
their sustainability commitments. So the
It-
goals.
It's like an oxymoron.
Yeah.
I mean, that they use these words and they mean the opposite of what
Right.
they
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
are.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. Follow up on the gas and everything coming in. Back to the SRP. If that seat goes to the what is it? The green
The Sierra Club.
Sierra Club. What can they do?
Shut the plant down.
Really?
Well,
They
I
can't
mean-
shut the pipeline down, but they can
Right.
shut the plants
Right.
down.
So,
Okay.
so right now Springerville has dual ownership. Well, there's three entities that owned it. Units 3 and 4 are owned by TEP. Units 1 and 2 are owned by SRP. TEP's already announced, I think 2 weeks ago, right after the Transwestern announcement, TEP came back and said, we're going to convert units 3 and 4 to natural gas. So we're going to bring the pipeline in and convert those to natural gas. We'll be able to run those at 100%. And it would be foolish, in my opinion, to have the gas line right out in front and SRP not convert units 1 and 2 to natural gas. So I have a feeling that SRP will follow suit, hopefully before their board, elections, in the event that something nefarious happens and we get these, Sierra Club folks elected. That we can at least get their commitment to converting that plant to natural gas.
And I don't want to sit here and tell everybody that's going to be complete doom and gloom. I mean, it will be, but
I was going to say, I mean, just look at California.
yeah. But as you saw with California, when they started getting all these renewables online, they were doing it under the guise of removing natural gas. They use more natural gas now than before they started. And that's what's going to happen to SRP. They're going to be buying they're going to be buying energy on the market. They may end up selling those plants to APS, and then APS will sell energy back to SRP. It's going to be a shell game in a sense,
Right.
but they'll still have power. You're just going to be paying more for it.
Right.
So
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yep.
yeah,
More for the for the same. Is there anything else that I mean that was a big? I wasn't aware of that, so that's huge
It's a big
for
deal.
for Arizona.
It's a big deal
Absolutely.
for Arizona.
Anything else that that I didn't ask
Yeah,
that
I just,
we should know?
Just want to say thank you to everyone that supported Nick and I the first time around.
and even bigger.
And thank you for supporting Renee and Rachel and reelecting Leah to the commission, because it's for the first time in a very long time we've got a 5-0 Republican majority, and we're taking advantage of having that Republican majority. And so we're doing good things. We hope you'll continue to support Nick and I in our roles, help us get reelected, and so we can continue doing the good things for Arizona.
For the viewers, to find out more about you or your campaign, where can they go?
You can go to my website, is thompson4corpcom.com, and or you can follow us on social media. We're both on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or X. So we're out there socially, so you can see us.
My website is pretty simply nickmyers.us, and that's MYERS. And same, right? We all the immediate stuff that we're doing goes on social media, so we'll get done every week. We have a graphic showing pictures of all the stuff we've gone to and done that week, whether it be commission related, campaign related, how we're working for the people.
Yep.
It goes in that graphic. We do them, throughout the week. It's just a great way to stay on top of the things that we're doing. Press releases we throw out on there pretty regularly.
Okay. Jeez.
That's right. Got to have the obligatory selfie for this next Saturday.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, really appreciate you
Alex,
coming
thank
on
you.
the show.
Absolutely.
I think this
These are
was
great questions. We appreciate the opportunity to speak to them.
yeah. Like I said, this was a eagerly awaited podcast. Our viewers do want to know what's happening at the Corporation Commission. I think I for sure have learned some things here of all the other things that you do. That is that 2%.
Oh, we haven't even scratched the surface on all the work we've been doing at the federal level and the national level. We've been in D.C. a lot the last couple of years, beating on the Biden administration as well as the Trump administration.
I'm hoping that this translates into Arizona being one of the leaders in energy, in energy independence,
Absolutely.
stability, cost.
That was one of the
Absolutely.
things that was our goal when we first got elected is, Arizona first. We want to make sure that Arizona has energy dominance. Now, it's hard to get there when you're reliant upon outside sources,
Sure.
right? But we're going to do all that we can to make sure that our utilities are healthy, but they aren't being made healthy off the back of our consumers, right? Because at the end of the day, we're ratepayers too. We don't want to have to pay any more for power, water, sewer than we have to.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, at the end of the day, we just want to, the worst thing we could do is become a California, where you have a PG&E that's filing bankruptcy every 2 to 3 years and raising costs to try to get out of that debt. Right?
Do you remember when California was like, "Hey, I'm going to California. I'm in California. I made it to California." It was
That's a big deal. Yeah.
people abroad. Oh, California, and now
They had
people
name
laugh.
recognition.
Right.
People are laughing.
They were like, I'm going to Mississippi. I'm going to Texas. I'm going to Arizona.
Tennessee. Yeah.
I mean,
Colorado,
people are
so-
laughing.
Yeah.
And that guy wants to run the country.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
be in charge of the.
He thinks he
yeah,
does.
Yeah.
I think one more thing. We regulate water utilities. I came from fighting a water utility. That was the background.
That was
got me
the
there.
start.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was a bad situation. It was very horrible. We had to make some major changes. It was totally not normal type of rate making and everything. And we recently had to vote on that. I still live in the area. And it was an easy vote for me to make because it was the right thing to do, but I was affected by it just as much as everybody else, and we got a lot of grief about it. But sometimes those hard decisions are hard to swallow, but they are the right thing to do, and we are affected by it just as much as everybody else. And I think that's important to realize that we aren't exempt from having to pay the same rates that we have to approve.
You don't live out
That
of
might be a
state.
conflict of interest, actually.
Yeah. So you got to deal with the same consequences of your
That's right.
decisions.
That's right. My wife wasn't happy with me either when I went home that day, but she understood.
You might not like it, but you might appreciate it later.
Yeah, that's right.
With that being said, gentlemen, once again, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
For those of you watching, those of you listening, if you like this content, please like this podcast, share, subscribe, and we look forward to introducing some more of your candidates coming forward. With that being said, I'm Alex Ranicic. Let's save Mesa together. See you next time.